Hey YouTube, once again, Colin here to rebuttal Jay Smith for the second time. Uh, the topic of this one is who chose the books of the New Testament and the Quran. And this video Jay made a long time ago. It's the same with the other one, so I'm kind of slow in the upkeep here, but forgive me for that. He talks about that the early that people, certain individuals of power wanted the New Testament, wanted the certain books, and he gives his reasons why. However, I'd like to point out that, as told to me by a pastor that I know of First United Methodist Church, which that might not have any sort of authority with anybody watching this video. But he is a master. He has a master's in divinity, and he did teach comparative religion. And he told me in a nutshell, the creation of the New Testament came down to a vote, a very biased vote by many Orthodox Catholic bishops, if you will, pre-Catholics, however you want to paint the picture. They're the ones that decided what the canon was going to be. This wasn't some mutual unified Christian, excuse me, agreement. This was something that these people in charge, or the authority, or the Orthodox wanted. And you might not consider any of these other people who disagree to be Christian. That's their decision. However, Jay is nice enough, in his opinion, I've never heard this criteria before, but he gives us 5 criteria to what makes a book validated to be into the New Testament. Point number 1, it was supposed to be written by an apostle. So, for instance, apostle, disciple, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, if you want to consider them apostles, sure. Paul, definitely, the apostle Paul. Peter in his letters. The book of Revelation, there's John again, very nice. However, I'd like to point out that there are these other Gospels, which are in this book right here, the Essential Gnostic Gospels, and I have another book in my library here called the Other Bible, where there are books that are attributed to names such as Peter, Mary Magdalene, Thomas, and Jay mentions these, but I'm curious as to why these writings don't fulfill this first criteria. Was not Thomas a disciple, an apostle? Mary Magdalene was considered an apostle by some. I mean, why don't these other documents, who are named after these people, why aren't these considered part of the New Testament? But then he goes on to say fact number 2, or criteria number 2, did the person prove to be a man of God? Now, Abdullah and Isa, in one of their videos, they mock Jay at this point. They go, well, how do we know the person was a man of God? Because he said he was, and they make a big joke about it. Well, that's fine. But it's a good point, though. How do we know who was a man of God? What proof do we have? We really don't. So, moving on. 3, the gospel if the gospel had errors in it, it was thrown out. Well, I see not only errors in the gospels in the New Testament today, I see errors among the Gospels we have today. So to use Jay's phrase in his video, when in doubt, throw it out. Okay. Then we have point 4. It had the power of God. The writing had the power of God in it. Okay. And then we have point 5. This is kind of humorous here. We have, was accepted by the people of God. Was this writing accepted by people who believed in God? Well, as far as I know, there were many communities who accepted the Gnostic writings, hence why the Orthodox early church fathers that Jay subscribes to, they talk against these people because they're a threat. They're growing in number. People enjoy this sort of theology, this other early Christian theology. People surrounded themselves with the Gospels of Mary Magdalene, Thomas, Judas, things of that nature. So far, these other writings, according to Jay's criteria, they check out. Except for some that really can't be proven for any of these writings, in my opinion. But then he sort of contradicts the whole list. He gives us this criteria list, and then he goes on to say, in a nutshell, that these writings that are in this book right here cannot be accepted because they were written much too late. And he emphasizes this over and over again, much too late. They were too late to be accepted into the canonical New Testament. But the fact of the matter is, I want to know. So you're saying that if something's too late, that it's disqualified. But what do you mean much too late? What does that mean when you say it was too late? Too late for the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD when most of these writings were already written? Too late for that? Because that's the body that decided what the canon was going to be. So is it too late for that council? These writings right here? Is the Gospel of Judas too late? I don't know about that. And then you say things such as, that the early church didn't know about these writings. The early church meaning, I don't know, Peter and James? Were they familiar? Do we know for a fact that they were actually familiar with the Gospel of, let's say, John? I don't know if they were. I think John was written much too late, in my opinion. Were they familiar? Was the early church familiar? I don't think the early church, with Paul and Peter and Barnabas and James, actually established a Canaan. There is no reference in the book of Acts, which you believe in, Jay, where it says that they decided which gospels were going to be what. So what are you talking about the early church? Early church fathers, such as Augustine, Athanasius, Irenaeus? Well, they have their opinion, but it wasn't until the Council of Nicaea where it was finally decided what was going to be in there. And a lot of these writings were already floating around. Now, some of them you mentioned, were they written after this point? Perhaps. But the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene were right around that same time. They just did not agree with what the Orthodox agreed with. And they're the ones who decided. They deemed people heretics, and even some of the early church fathers disagreed about which books. For instance, in the book of Revelation, some early Orthodox fathers did not want the book of Revelation in there. They wanted the Apocalypse of Peter, not the Gnostic Apocalypse of Peter, the Apocalypse of Peter, which is almost similar to the book of Revelation, talking about Jesus, talking about the end times and hell and things of that nature. They didn't want that in there. Some of them did, some of them didn't. But the fact of the matter is that then you go on to talk about the Quran once again. Here I have the Quran right here. And you say that, once again, you talk about al-Bukhari, as I mentioned in my other video, and you make that next historical error of misrepresenting the Hadiths once again. You know, the fact of the matter is that everyone has their own opinion of what the canon is. Even to this day, with the success of the Da Vinci Code and the discovery of the Nag Hammadi scriptures and these scriptures, people are realizing that Christianity was not just one unified force. There was not one agenda. There was not one opinion. There were many opinions, and it was whoever won. Whoever was in charge of the politics, they decided what the canon and what was going to be read by people. And we see that through all of Christian history. And we do see that because one of the errors of Byzantium, of Constantinople, was of the Arian belief of theology of Christianity, and he condemned what was going to become what would become the Catholic theology at one point. Then he died, and then Catholicism took over as continuous heirs of the church as leadership. So the fact of the matter is, Jay, and this goes for anybody else who wants to pretend this fantasy that Christianity was a unified decision. It wasn't. Until 325, when the Council of Nicaea decided as a collective group with the backing of Constantine that the other people were heretics. End of discussion. So stop acting like this is some sort of unified idea, this big fantasy that you're living in. Please stop. That's not true. Stop lying to people. I'm sorry. Alright. That's all I have to say. I know I'm being really serious. I'm sorry if I'm yelling. Please forgive me of that. I have my friend Devin here who looks like he's scared over here, so please forgive me. The fact of the matter is, I get really excited when people are just twisting facts and just, lying to people. And I know you get angry when people call you a liar, Jay. I'm sorry, but to me, you're twisting the Hadith facts. You could throw me all these other biased scholars, Arthur Jeffries, whoever you want, but the fact of the matter is, I have the traditions right here. You told me if I read al-Bukhari, it's simple enough, I should understand. I do. You misrepresented it. Thank you very much. Peace be with you all. This is Colin signing out.